Welcome to the Explainer. Today, we are unpacking something truly staggering. Just imagine a codebase, a fully rigorous, executable programming environment that claims to mathematically unite theoretical physics, biological systems, and formal logic. Yep, we're exploring the Gnosis topological programming language, and honestly, its audacity is absolutely off the charts. If you've ever wondered what it looks like when pure, abstract philosophy gets translated into zero-defect computer code, well, you're in exactly the right place. Okay, let's dive right into this. Right there in the README file of this project, we're hit with this monumental claim: one formula generates everything. The authors are actually asserting that 7 universal laws, 35 falsifiable predictions, and over 350 mechanized theorems all reduce down to just one single equation and Peano's basic successor axiom. They're effectively saying the entire complexity of the universe can be compiled from a single, mathematically pure seed. Wild, right? So that immediately brings up our central mystery for this explainer. How does a single topological language actually pull this off? How do you write code that claims to execute the very fabric of reality? It sounds a lot like magic, but as we're going to see, it's mapped out with painstaking, relentless mathematical rigor in what is known as the Gnosis ledger. Section 1. A universe in 581 files. To even begin to grasp the sheer scale of this project, we have to look at the Gnosis category, which contains 581 individual files. But listen, this isn't your standard dry technical manual or some everyday web app. This is a theorem ledger. And in the Lean 4 programming language, which this uses, there's a concept called a sorry gap. Basically, that's a placeholder for an unproven mathematical claim. Well, the Gnosis ledger proudly boasts absolutely 0 sorry gaps. That means every single one of its wild claims is mathematically sealed and mechanically proven by the compiler. No shortcuts. Now, what's really going to give you sheer whiplash here is the table of contents. On one side, you've got files mapping out biological and medical realities, things like cancer predictions and the biological cellular Q-bridge. But then, sitting right alongside them in the exact same mathematical framework, you have files like black hole void singularity. It is literally treating oncology and astrophysics as just different outputs of the exact same underlying topological code. I mean, imagine trying to debug the universe and a black hole throws a syntax error. To keep us totally grounded as we move forward, we really need to define the engine running this universe, which is Boolean math. You're going to hear this term a lot today. Boolean math is the formal mathematical kernel of Gnosis. Think of it as the ultimate bridge. It takes highly esoteric concepts, stuff like theoretical topology and cosmic resonance, and forces them into runtime governance. It's taking the completely abstract and translating it into executable computational proofs. Moving on to our next section, the Achilles pursuit. So how does this Boolean math actually work in practice? Let's shift our focus to a hyper-specific, genuinely fascinating microcosm in the codebase. It's a file called achillestortoiseladder.lean. It takes Zeno's ancient Greek paradox, the famous story of Achilles racing a tortoise but never quite catching it, and formally maps it out as a mathematical ladder. The code uses 4 specific Gnosis constants: 4, 6, 10, and 12. These represent Nash, Skyarms, Boole, and God. To create the ladder itself, the codebase scales these constants by dividing them all by 12, which establishes a common denominator of 6. So Nash lands on position 2, Skyarms on 3, Boole on 5, and God, which is our ultimate target here, sits right at position 6. Let's formally introduce the characters of our mathematical story, as defined by the code. Achilles isn't a person here. Achilles is actually defined as an operation, the Kleinemann +1 lift. The tortoise represents God, or the ultimate structural target sitting at that 6th position on the ladder. Setting it up this way makes this highly abstract code feel like a thrilling, tangible pursuit. Achilles is mathematically trying to reach the tortoise. Dynamically, the math maps out Achilles' movements in alternating steps. He jumps 2 units to reach Nash, then 1 unit to Scrums, then 2 units to Boole, and finally takes a 1-unit step toward God. The code actually refers to this very specific 2-1-2-1 rhythm as the Kleinemann duad heartbeat. It's like the pulse of the algorithm. And as Achilles moves, the gap visibly shrinks. It starts at 4, drops to 3, then 1, and finally hits 0. So the crucial point here is that unlike the original Greek paradox, where Achilles gets infinitely close but never touches the tortoise, in this computational ledger, Achilles actually does cover the exact physical distance. The mathematical gap successfully drops to absolute 0. Which brings us to overtaking the void. Now, you might be wondering, if Achilles physically catches up, why in the world is it still considered a paradox in the Gnosis ledger? Well, it all comes down to what happens at the exact apex of this climb, step 4. Remember, Achilles is the Kleinemann +1 lift. For the first 3 rungs, the math works out perfectly. Nash's constant 4 + 1 = 5. Skeim's 6 + 1 = 7. Bewley's 10 + 1 = 11. Now, 5, 7, and 11 result in what the code calls Ramanujan special prime numbers. That just means the elegant mathematical pattern holds flawlessly. But look what happens next. When Achilles tries to overtake the final rung, God's constant 12, well, 12 + 1 = 13, and suddenly that beautiful pattern entirely shatters. 13 is literally the mathematical villain of this codebase. As the text explicitly states, 13 is the very first prime number outside of the Ramanujan triplet phase. It's the exact moment where the elegant equation abruptly breaks and just scrapes into the void. It turns out 13 is unlucky even at the foundational level of reality. Who knew? The comments inside the Lean4 source code actually summarize this twist beautifully. They say, the tortoise vanishes into the void precisely where Achilles lands. So Achilles doesn't fail because he's too slow. He mathematically succeeds in covering the physical distance. He fails because the mathematical target fundamentally ceases to exist in the underlying framework the very moment he arrives. The physical gap closes, but the structural target just vanishes. Next up, adaptive witnesses and data. Now, you might be sitting there thinking, this is all just beautiful, abstract poetry written in code, but let's ground this right back into reality. The Gnosis ledger is a fully functioning, executing system. The file adaptivewitnesses.lean proves that this paradox isn't just a fun thought experiment. The codebase is actively generating JSON witness data to prove its formal boundaries. It's actually calculating throughput, queue boundaries, and routing probabilities to ensure the math perfectly translates into real-world execution. Quickly running through these concrete data points exported by the ledger for the 2-node adaptive raw ceiling witness, you have a max left queue of 2, a reroute probability of exactly 1/2, a spectral radius of 0, and a clearly defined state count of 18. Going through this tethers the dizzying abstract topology we just explored directly back to hard computer science. We're talking about measurable, executing computational throughput here. Which brings us right back to the ultimate meaning of the Achilles ladder file. We're turning a truly haunting conclusion from the source text itself. God is not physically distant, but structurally absent at the very point where you would touch. The codebase is actually using the shape of the ladder's last rung, that exact breaking point at number 13, to mechanically map the exact phase boundary of human knowability. And that leaves us with an incredibly profound question to ponder. If Achilles completely masters the mechanics of the system and reaches the physical position, only to find that the target has structurally relocated into the unknowable, is the void a failure of the Boolean math, or is it actually the ultimate proof of its perfection? It is a deeply fascinating architecture, and the crazy part is there are 580 more files in the Gnosis ledger just waiting to be explored. Thanks for joining me on this explainer. Keep seeking those structures, and I'll catch you next time.